Hi there, I'm Danny Flexen and welcome to this week's edition of SecondsOut ReFLEXions. We're here every Monday, usually at 4:30 PM, to review the action that's taken place on the weekend just gone. Big show obviously at the weekend was at the O2 in London, a matchroom show on Sky Sports box office, which I'm happy to say I paid for, so don't come looking for me for piracy crimes. And it largely fulfilled its potential. A lot of complaints about the chief support, which we'll come to in a minute. But let's start with the main event, and Vasiliy Lomachenko, while not maybe quite at his dazzling best, and a lot of the credit for that has to go to the performance put up by his opponent, Luke Campbell, still looked really good. I think the best compliment you can give to Lomachenko is that Campbell probably executed the game plan that he and trainer Shane McGuigan had to a T. Didn't really do a lot wrong. Tried to use his height and reach, his boxing skills, dropped in lots of feints, his movement was good. Everything you would expect from Campbell, a performance that would have beaten the large majority of lightweights in the world today. And Lomachenko soaked it all up, had a few problems, but not really, and won a vast majority of the rounds. Without ever looking incredible, without ever looking that kind of dazzling, dynamic best that we've seen from him before, he controlled the pace and distance and nature of the fight for the most part. He dropped Campbell with body shots, hurt him severely with body shots earlier in the fight as well, and just stayed a step ahead. It took a little while to work Campbell out. It's a bit of a chess match early on, as a lot of people predicted. But once Lomachenko knew what was coming at him, he adapted, and he just worked very well. He out-jabbed Campbell, he was aggressive, he knew when to come in, he moved his head well on the way in, as he often does. His footwork was outstanding, and I mean, Campbell was a great amateur, one of Britain's best ever amateurs, in fact, Olympic gold medalist in his own right. Obviously, Loma's got two, not bragging. But his footwork's very good anyway. But Lomachenko's was on a whole different level, and I think that's a large part of what won him the fight, and what wins him the majority of his fights, It's easy to be caught up by the speed and the variety of punches, because that's what catches the eye. But the footwork is the door that opens for everything else, if that's even an analogy. But it was really good, really absorbing to watch as well. It wasn't the most action-packed fight of the year, but always watchable. You always wanted to know exactly what was happening. As the Sky commentator said about 1 million times, it didn't look like there was a lot going on in there, but there was a lot going on in there. And they were right, probably didn't need sand as much as they did, but they were right. So that was really good. Now we wait to see what Loma does next. He's talked about perhaps dropping back down to super featherweight or featherweight. There might be some good matches down there for him. Miguel Bichel, Gervonta Davis, just two examples that come to mind. Mikey Garcia is another one. I don't think he's going to go any higher than lightweight. As for Campbell, hopefully he can come again. I think pretty much any other lightweight in the world, he'd stand a 50-50 or better chance of beating. So he could still win a world title. It's not over for him. And I think he'll have learned a lot from that fight as well. He might never be quite good enough to beat Lomachenko, but who is? Lomachenko might have lost the fight to Salido very early in his career. But right now, he's a complete fighter, and I think at lightweight and below, I don't think he can be beaten. And unless he grows old overnight, I don't think he can be beaten. Chief support, as I kind of hinted at earlier, Hughie Fury against Alexander Povetkin. I actually thought Fury would win on points. I thought he'd just be a bit too young and fresh and clever for Povetkin. But as it turned out, Povetkin's still got a fair bit left. We saw some of that last year against first David Price, then Anthony Joshua. He fought aggressively and moved his head well on the way in, threw lots of hooks and uppercuts, tried to keep working on the inside when Hughie claimed him as well. Fury typically worked off the back foot, tried to use his long straight shots as Povetkin was coming in with some success, but just didn't do enough. And we've said this about Hughie so many times now. I don't think that he hasn't got world-class ability, but in his biggest fights, Joseph Parker, Kubrat Pulev obviously was cut early, but still, and Povetkin, he's just not aggressive enough and not active enough. And I think that's a bit of an issue, especially against Povetkin, who's almost 40 years old. I think actually he turns 40, it might be today. So happy birthday, Alexander, Sasha, if you watch him, Sasha to his friends. But getting past the birthday salutations, Fury probably didn't do enough. Some of that was down to Povetkin, but I think he needs to work on his output. Maybe drop down to kind of European level for a bit, build back up again. He's still only 25, Hughie Fury, so he can come again. As with Povetkin, he puts himself right in line for another world title shot. Obviously, Joshua hasn't got the belts anymore. We'll see what happens in his rematch with Andy Ruiz. Wilder's always needing opponents. That fight's fallen through a couple of times against Povetkin because of drug issues on the Russians' part. But let's wait and see. He's right back up there now, and good performance, looked as good as ever, I think it's fair to say in that one. Another big fight on the show, and this one was mired in controversy, although it was quite exciting to watch. The actual ending of the fight was intriguing, if nothing else. Charlie Edwards making the second defence of his WBC flyweight title against Julio Cesar Martinez, even, of Mexico, who'd come into the fight off knocking out Andrew Selby with a body shot. Hurt Edwards really badly to the body in the third round. Edwards backed off, was under real duress, getting hit with lots and lots of punches to head and body. Decided to take a knee, perhaps sensibly. We'll never know if he would have survived or not, because while he was on his knees very late on, Martinez came over and whacked him with a shot right to the ribs. Devastating body shot, one from which Edwards couldn't recover. Now, the referee was right next to them when this occurred, but instead of admonishing the Mexican, giving Edwards some more time, or even disqualifying the perpetrator, he just carried on counting, and Edwards was counted out and ostensibly lost his title. Then, with reminders of the WWE days, it seemed like some glass had smashed, and Mauricio Suleiman, WBC president, came bowling out like a prime Stone Cold Steve Austin, burst into the ring and said that it had been agreed pre-fight that the British Boxing Board of Control had agreed to defer to the WBC's rules on the use of instant replay. And in this case, they'd had a look at the video and decided that it was an illegal shot. So the fight had been ruled a no contest. The belt had been given back to Charlie Edwards, who must have felt quite bittersweet about it. In the immediate aftermath, in his post-fight interview, when he thought he'd lost the belt, he talked about moving up to super flyweight and said the weight had really killed him in the build-up to Martinez. So let's see if that's still the case. But yeah, Suleiman gave the belt back to Edwards. I'm sure Martinez wasn't particularly happy, especially as Suleiman originally got in the ring as a translator for the post-fight victory speech for his fellow Mexican. What a palaver. But yeah, Suleiman also ordered a direct rematch, so we shall wait and see if that happens. But it was hilarious. It's something we've never really seen before. And not particularly consistent either when you consider that Joshua Buatsi, in his fight on the bill, stopped Ryan Ford in mostly impressive fashion, but landed a low blow as his final finishing shot. Now, that wasn't overruled or made a no contest or anything like that. Obviously, it wasn't a WBC title fight, and that comes into it. I understand the distinction, but you can see why Martinez might feel hard done by when he looks at two fights on the same bill. That's all I'm going to talk about with that card, although there were other fights on there, but I don't want to bore you by staying on too long. I'll probably bore you anyway, just from the few minutes I spend. Let us know what you feel of the big fights on the bill. Did you think Povetkin Fury was closer than the official scorecards? Wide win, of course, for Povetkin. What did you think of the Edwards-Martinez controversy and Suleiman's role in it? What did you make of Buatsi's latest performance? And most importantly, who, if anyone out there, can beat Lomachenko? Has that man been born? Is he at lightweight or below? Let us know. And also, obviously, what's next for Campbell? Give us your comments below. I'll be back next week for ReFLEXions, 4:30 PM Monday, and here on Thursday looking ahead with FLEXpectations. Thanks very much.